Thank you very much. We will start off by opening time for unscheduled public appearances. So how this works, for those of you that are not familiar with this, if you have a comment about anything that is going to be on the agenda, would you be kind enough to defer your comments until we get to that specific agenda item? But if you have something that is just unscheduled, just some general city stuff that you'd like to talk about, you're welcome to come up. Please state your name and limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please. Yes, there will be opportunity to discuss that later. Yes, so we'll do the same thing for each agenda item. All right, if there are no items, we'll conclude the unscheduled time and move on. The first consent item is approval of meeting minutes from the 22nd of April, 2025. And as you recall, fellow commissioners, there was all those updates as a result of state legislation where we needed to update our city code. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for April 22nd, 2025, the general city management.
And I'll second.
Okay, if we could do roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next topic, general plan transportation element amendments. And this is a legislative item. Rob, would you be willing to just walk us through this, please?
Be happy to. Thank you.
And for those of the audience, pardon me, Rob, let me just describe this. How the process works is city staff will give a description of what is being proposed, and then there will be some time for public comments. And when that's concluded, we'll close that time, and then we'll have discussion, questions amongst the planning commissioners, and then we'll have a vote about that. So go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. So as you may recall, a month or so ago, we held a workshop on our ongoing process to amend our general plan. In April, we discussed transportation, the transportation element of the general plan. This item is to amend our current one a little bit. I guess little depending on how you view it. 2 items in the current version of the plan that will then be incorporated or not into the future plan as well. Our general plan, as we've discussed, it's very kind of, I hate to repeat myself, general. It's not meant to guide specific decisions with very limited circumstances. And one of those is found in state law, which I've given it up on the screen there, which is after we've adopted a general plan, we cannot authorize or construct a lot of public things, including streets, unless it conforms to the general plan. So as you may recall a little while ago, when there was talk about maybe widening 4800 West, we went through that because our current plan has it as a 3-lane road, and there was discussion whether we should make that 5 lanes. We had to update the general plan in order to authorize that type of work, which we didn't, mostly. So this is, I've just pulled this from the transportation workshop we had as a kind of refresher of what the transportation element does in the general plan. Provides a high-level overview of transportation system. It outlines general location and function of current transportation infrastructure, gives general guidance for maintenance and infrastructure planning, and importantly for this discussion, it describes the functional classification system and establishes the classification of certain streets. So what is that? That's the difference between a local street and a freeway. We call that the functional classification system, where we classify different roads based on their function. At the highest level, where you have the most mobility, is arterials, freeways, and then in the middle are the collectors, and at the lowest end are the local residential streets. So it's kind of also a speed and use. At the freeway and arterial side, higher speeds, much greater use, typically wider roads. Local street, less traffic, lower speeds, limited use. Based on the engineers, go ahead.
Rob, do you mind if I just say something? So one of the things that was interesting to me when we did the transportation discussion was, in some cases, you can have a street designated, but the city council still, and at least with our input, reserves the right to limit or restrict speed on that road. And one of the things that piqued my curiosity was some of these collectors, you sort of assume large road collector equals evil in my world at least. But one of the advantages is then you can't have a lot of access points onto that collector. So if I understood it correctly, there are some virtues to having something being classified as a collector, even if the city's intent is not to make that autobahn sort of high-speed access.
Correct. And that's actually, well, it's a very important aspect. It's actually right here. The other item that goes along with that classification is the more impactful classification, the arterials and collectors. We require greater spacing for intersections. We restrict residential connections to it. We don't want people turning on and off of there. So Highland Boulevard, for example, it's one of the city's primary arterial. We very heavily restrict how many roads can connect to it. We don't allow any residences to front directly onto Highland Boulevard. We don't want people slowly turning in and out of Highland Boulevard. Instead, we funnel them into collectors or local roads, which are slower speeds, less traffic, and say, okay, now you can face your homes onto that, like 6000 West. We say, don't put your homes directly onto 6000 West, face it onto a local street inside of it. Same with all of our other streets. So the other thing that we do is we actually provide cross sections. So here's our standard street cross section. You'll see it's a 56-foot right-of-way that includes 34 feet of asphalt, 2 feet of curb and gutter on each side, 4 feet of park strip on either side, and then 5 feet of sidewalk on either side, overall adding up to 56 feet. This is our default road for every road in Highland. This is our 2-lane minor collector, and I'm highlighting these two obviously because we're going to be talking about 11200. Our 2-lane minor collector standard is 66 feet wide. Mostly it goes from 34 feet of asphalt increases to 44 feet of asphalt. So we add 10 feet of asphalt so we can have travel lanes and right shoulders and turn lanes for right and left turns. So the proposed amendments, we have two. The first is to reclassify 11200 North down from a 2-lane residential collector to a local street. The second is to add some language into the transportation element that will allow the city, particularly the city council, to approve alternative standards in limited circumstances. So first with 11200 North, and I tried to find all the transportation maps we had. 1980, it showed as a local road, and it was very small. There wasn't much of 11200 North back then. In 97, we had a portion of 5600 West to Alpine Highway was a residential collector. The remaining portions were local roads. In 2008, when we last did our general plan, the entire length of 11200 North from 6000 West to North County Boulevard is a 2-lane collector. But then west of 6000, where we now have Patterson put in a 10-lot subdivision over there, and east of North County, where we have kind of going into the gravel pit, those are local roads. And I think that kind of highlights there's been a little bit of confusion about how to handle 11200 North. It's never been, it currently is not a full 66-foot right-of-way. We do have portions of it that are kind of that wide, or we have property that's been dedicated to make it, but it hasn't been improved fully to that. Majority of it, though, still remains that 56-foot local street. And with the Williamsview subdivision recently, there was a request that the council granted to build the road there at the 56-foot standard rather than the 66-foot standard. So this, you can kind of see the difference. This is right off of 5600 West. Just to the west there is the dead end cul-de-sac. You can see there's 56 feet more or less on the west side that expands into that 66-foot. But then just a little bit further east, it shrinks down because it's unimproved property on the north side. So we have this in a little bit of the areas, but that's the difference of the road. And further looking at this, here's all of our east-west collectors. We're doing a traffic calming study. We're trying to control traffic and speeds on these roads. One of the things that stood out to me on 11200 North, it has the lowest traffic. Not saying it doesn't have a speeding problem. It does. That's something we'll deal with traffic calming. But it also has one of the most residences connecting to it. If you go per mile, it's like 30-odd residences per mile, and 9600 North is about 34 connections per mile, and everything else is far less than that. So looking at it, it doesn't really seem like it's really worked as a collector. It hasn't really been built out that way. We don't have, the road built out that way. It doesn't seem to handle the traffic that we need. And at the Transportation General Plan, our consultant engineer said, based on Highlands density, the kind of standard we recommend would be a collector every half mile and an arterial every mile. And 11200 is only a quarter mile away from Timpanogos Highway. So when he looked at it, he said, you don't really need it there. You don't need a collector in this area. And it's not really functioning as a collector. So because of that, as the kind of council and commission discussed during that, would be to downgrade, some would view this probably as an upgrade, to turn 11200 North from that 66-foot wide residential collector standard to just a local street. So that means that if this amendment is approved, the city couldn't go in to build a 66-foot right-of-way. It would be limited to building only a 56-foot right-of-way. If more properties along 11200 North develop, they would build at a 56-foot right-of-way, not the 66-foot. So this would, essentially for future planning, shrink 11200 North to just a local road. So any questions on this first amendment portion?
But it doesn't stop us from connecting it for connectivity, right?
No. So all of our local roads, we don't really limit how they connect to each other except with that spacing for arterials and collectors.
Right.
So this would encourage more residential connections to connect into this. So if new property were to develop, we'd say, yeah, you can face your homes onto 11200 North. That wouldn't be a problem.
And is this for the entire stretch of 11200 North?
Yes. So you can see on there, I kind of highlighted it. It's very blurry because the map we have in our plan is blurry. All the way on the east, that's North County, and on the west is 6000, which is the only section classified as a two-lane collector. So that would be, basically, would just strike that blue line through there and just leave it as a local road.
So how's it been being developed now? Why isn't it that width now?
Part of it is because development went in, and I don't know that we had our standards in place at the time. Like, so I went through the history of the old maps. They didn't always show all of it as a collector, so we might have allowed development to go in. Recently, there was some question of whether we still needed this. With the Williams View subdivision, the council approved it to go in at 56 feet. We've just never really, except for maybe one or two areas, really pushed that 66-foot wide collector status. So,
And does that spacing allow for connection in that gap with,
so I'll get to the gap in just a
okay,
second.
okay.
So this is just for the road.
So right now, though, there's a easement for the bigger road across all these properties. Would that shrink?
Not all of them, some of them.
For the ones that do, would you shrink that then?
We would. We'd probably go through a vacation process and give the property back to the property owners. We'd have to figure out, because the road depends on which side it got built out. In some places, 66 feet. Some places, it's just we haven't built the road out, so we'll probably just say, well, we don't need that anymore. It's one of those things we'd look at as,
So we would just clean up the easement. all
we just
along
clean it up. Yeah. It'd be a long process to do, as any property solving is. Okay. There's no more questions on this proposed change. The other one, it relates to 11200 North, but also is a little bit broader than that. I have proposed language based on the direction I received from that workshop to essentially allow the city some flexibility in allowing substandard connections or substandard roads. And I don't mean substandards in terms of not a good road, meaning it's not 56 feet wide or 66 feet wide. So here's the language I proposed where if significant obstacles such as topography, land ownership, or existing infrastructure impede construction of a street to city standards, and the street is necessary or beneficial to the city, the City Council may approve an alternative standard that promotes access, circulation, and safety. So, on the next slide, the purpose would be to give the city some flexibility when dealing with unique and challenging road projects. I'll end with 11200 North, because that's, I think, what a lot of people are very interested in. But there's places in the city where we have, say, existing ditches where they've concreted it in as a narrow thing, where it'd be hard to expand the road and also hard to get the park strip unless we want to tear out the entire ditch system and redo it. Maybe in that case it makes sense. Maybe let's put the sidewalk right next to the ditch and have it go there, which wouldn't really meet our standard. We have Viewpoint Road where we only have sidewalk on one side of it, partially because of how steep it is. We want to keep people away from the steeper side, and we don't want to cut into the mountain as much. As we develop, kind of remaining maybe topographically challenging areas, and we don't want to cut as much into the mountain as much. And so we'll say, put a sidewalk on one side. Maybe there's times we want to just get an emergency access in place, or we want to improve where we have budget for it. So the city's council is talking right now about doing 6000 West and 10400 North, the Strasburg Church area. I'm just trying to figure out how do we put some sidewalks in so children can walk through there safely. The worry is, if we start doing a project, does that mean we have to then do all of it? We didn't have to build, 10400 North to the 66-foot collector standard, or can we just do enough to make it safer? This would say, let's make it safer, prove an alternative standard for now, and then maybe we'll look at long-term fixing it up. So trying to give a little bit of flexibility in these odd scenarios where either due to history or topography, it's going to be challenging to get the standard right of way.
So who decides when it's used and when it's not used?
The council.
So something like this would always just go to council,
Yep.
but it'll be in here. It's not just something that staff can just use whenever.
No, and I wouldn't want it to be something that staff, I
Right.
would always want staff's default position, say, to a developer, come in and say, no, you got to give us the right of way. They say, it's really hard for X one, like, sorry, the code says it's,
Yeah.
it's this. If you want to get something different, we may need to talk to the planning commission and council about this.
Okay.
So I don't want it to be an easy exception for private development. I want it to be available if it's needed and for city projects where we're limited for a number of reasons. Now, I think the big reason, talking about 11200 North, so I'll just bring this up here. We talked about, I put this in the packet. This would also potentially allow this connection, which the council and commission talked about. This connection is about 20 odd feet wide, give or take a little bit. And there was discussion of, should we allow so the standard fire access is a 20-foot wide all-weather surface. Can we put something in there to facilitate that kind of access and a sidewalk? Well, there's one there, but we might have to adjust it. We couldn't build this to a 56-foot right-of-way standard without having to condemn a lot of property and cause a lot of commotion, and the city doesn't want to do that. Just will not do that. It's not an option. The question is, with the property the city owns, is it worth making a connection there? Should we facilitate that? So the general plan amendment could allow this. It's not saying this will be built. That's a construction question for council to decide whether to fund this project. But the general plan amendment would say, in this circumstance or in other circumstances where it seems reasonable, the council can say, yes, let's do a different standard than our normal road standard. So with that, any questions? Or what questions can I answer? Oh, sorry. Do you want me to leave that up there?
So, Rob, from my understanding, this amendment would be necessary to allow any kind of connection to be made. It's either the existing right-of-way, what was it, 56-foot right-of-way, or nothing.
Yes. That's kind of how our code is written. Is
Yes.
we build it to the city standard or we don't build it.
Right, okay.
We have. I mean, we do things that aren't quite up there. I like to make the general plan match what we actually do, or match what we do to the general plan. And so we're following that process. I am a planner.
Yeah, because we have a bunch of exceptions. That road down to Costco, we don't have the park strip. It's just curb adjacent.
Yes.
With the little, being practical, because you just can't bulldoze a whole bunch of homes.
That's a great example. There's times we might want to do a curb and sidewalk combo where it makes sense. we can't really do it. We don't have a standard that says for staff, you can approve a curb sidewalk here. Instead, we'd have to, this will at least say, maybe if it makes sense, let's talk to the council about it.
So would this amendment allow anywhere in the city for us to say, you know, this road, whether it's, you know, a local road or, you know, a collector or whatever, because of the nature and the character of the neighborhood, you know, we would rather have, you know, 10-foot lanes, a much larger median, let's call it 50-foot right away, and kind of, whether it's through, you know, future redevelopment or current development, being able to craft city streets within the city that better fit the nature and the character and the use of these neighborhoods.
I don't think this amendment would really get at that.
Mhm.
I think the better way to approach that, if we want to make that, say, we want to move towards allowing this as a standard for redevelopment or, you know, new projects, we rebuild a road, we want to narrow it. Probably the better route would be to add in a different amendment that says, here's our new cross section that can do one of these two things, and it's a 50-foot or 48-foot cross section. And here's when we use it, and give some discretion in the general plan, kind of generally when we want that. I think that would be a better way of going about doing that, which can be proposed by the Planning Commission.
So kind of like a menu of
Yes.
different options for different cross sections for rights of way.
We actually have two local residential standards. One is a 34 asphalt, which is our standard one. The other one's a 32-foot one for low impact, which we haven't really used. It's kind of more of a state thing, and no developers really wanted to take us up on that. But I could imagine here's our, super low impact residential, walkable, where we say, and we have, we have some traffic. If you've ever driven in like Sugar House or Salt Lake, where they've done all those bump outs at all the corners, like something like that, you could design that as a cross section. Say, here's what we do going forward as the city redevelops, streets or properties get redeveloped by private property owners, something like that.
Yeah, I'd like to see something like that. Because does the city know, have they pointed out any other stretches of street that are odd like this, that are, maybe 25 feet? And it's like, well, in order to ever develop this, it's going to take an amendment like this. Or is this pretty unique in the city?
11,200, I mean, this specific circumstance is pretty unique. Having less right-of-way than we need for our standard is not that uncommon, though. That happens fairly frequently.
Sure. How would we go about kind of including other options? Being able, with the idea of giving council and giving the city as much freedom and flexibility and leeway to use, certain pedestrian and friendly features of streets or traffic calming or road dieting kind of features that might be good for some streets and roads in the city. Would that be a separate thing? Would this amendment be able to pass, but then we address that separately?
My feeling is that's better done separately, but also probably could be a great time to put that into the upcoming the comprehensive general plan amendment. You'll have to make a recommendation, and part of that will include the updated transportation element. You could make a recommendation of, we like a lot of this, here's some additional language, and we'd recommend the council adopt some additional kind of menu options for local streets that are more pedestrian friendly. So I think putting it into that update would be a really good way of going about that.
I would like to hear other thoughts, specifically in that meeting with the commission and the council. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a lot of discussing about this road and this little stretch of connection specifically, and I think it was Councilmember Courtney that brought up kind of proposed, hey, why don't we allow for a connection, but only wide enough for emergency vehicles? And he was able to provide some statistics about, in the future, if there was some kind of catastrophe or fire, earthquake, or whatever, having that available, that specific kind of choke point throughway available would be vital in addressing some of these disasters. And I thought that was a really amazing proposal that kind of like cut to the heart of everything that we were talking about. Yeah, I would love to hear what anyone else on the commission has to say, and then the public. Oh yeah, after the public hearing. Yeah.
Any questions from? Thank you, Wes. Any other questions for Rob from fellow commissioners, or should we open it up for public comment? Rob, do you have anything else?
I'll
to
just
add?
end with my last slide. We did publish public notice of this public hearing. I have received at least one written comment by email. I believe all of you received that as well, expressing a desire to not widen 11-200 North or make that connection there. But I recommend that you hold a public hearing. My feeling is these are good amendments to make. Whether or not this specific project should go forward, you can make we like this as a general idea, but we don't necessarily like this. We want to put some limitations on the 11-200 North connection. But I think the overall, the two amendments will be helpful to the city. But you're free to make whatever recommendation you feel is best and most appropriate for Highland. So with that, go to public hearing.
All right, thank you very much. We'll now open it up for public hearing, and anybody that is here that would like to comment, remember they're two separate but related. One is changing the designation of 11-200, and then the other one specifically talking about giving the Planning Commission, City Council the flexibility to make adjustments to city standards. But we do that in any case nowadays, regardless of that. So the time is yours. Anybody who wants to come up, please just state your name clearly for the record. Make sure the microphone is on. And if you would be kind enough to limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please.
Technology. All right. My name is David Wilkins, and I live like right around the corner from the connection. And I recognize that the proposals are specifically about the reclassification and adding this amendment. But as has already been discussed, there's a lot of this that's really rotating around that specific connector. And so I think you're going to get a lot of at least informational stuff related to that specifically. For me, I have to say the reclassification totally makes sense. That road should be reclassified as a local road. Being a resident there for a few years now, it's very much heavily used as it would be as a residential street. Whereas lots of pedestrian cross traffic and kids out playing and all that. And then just for me personally, looking at the Second Amendment, which is related to this, the amendment itself seems reasonable to me. So I don't really have a complaint about that. With the big caveat that, as was questioned, I do hope that it is something where you have to come to the council to get the approval. It can't just be used willy-nilly. And so really after that, it's more information about the connector. Yeah, it's like, I'm okay with the amendment, don't want to use for this. The reason is connecting that. My primary concern is connecting as a through road. Primary concern is we don't want to see lots of through traffic, because that almost undoes the concept of it being a local road, because it pretty much connects from both arteries on both ends if you complete that bit. Whereas right now it offers a break, which is more consistent with how a local road would be. And so that's kind of my position on it. And then finally, if it was used for emergency traffic, I would hope that it would be set up with the pylons or something where emergency people can remove it to do their traffic. Otherwise, it's in place so it can't be used by the public. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Troy Harris. If you could please pull up the map that showed, we just had up very recently. You know, aside from the fact that I own the adjacent property, which, you know, for obvious reasons, I don't want this to happen, I think it's more an argument of how it would happen. So I almost wish it was a little bit further justified to the left, because if we could really see the total change that would need to occur, the concept of it being a road for an emergency vehicle, if you put bollards up, fine. I mean, nobody can go through but emergency vehicles. The time it takes to get those bollards down in an emergency isn't the fastest way to get around in the first place. You can literally take a 30-second diversion and you're around in the same spot. So when the conversation comes up about safety, and we're talking about an earthquake that's going to happen at some point in the near to far future, are we really willing to compromise the safety of an entire neighborhood for the next near to far off distance? Because there is no feasible way to make that a through lane. When you look at all the intersections that are coming into play, you've got cul-de-sacs on both sides, you've got offset roads, you've got, I mean, if someone could designate the signage that you would put up to kind of guide people around there, I would love to see it, because I don't think it's even feasible. So I propose one of two things as an alternative. Number one, scrap the plan permanently, because we've already brought like 300 people to a meeting when this came up initially. The locals don't want it. So who's it for? If it's for the emergency vehicles, let's come up with a plan that denies access for everyone else. And number two, here's a good idea. Sell me the property. I've been maintaining it now for 15 years. I let it go for 2 years, and go take a look at it right now, and the weeds are 6 feet tall. Nobody's maintaining it but me, at a cost of about $1,500 a year. So I'm willing to buy it and develop it in a way that the public can still continue to use it, the way they have been using it since the original plans were put in. It's a small local neighborhood. If you join them, you're going to turn it into a commuter lane one way or another. So my recommendation is to formalize the proposal so that you can actually see what a nightmare this is going to be for you guys, not only legally, but just logistically. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. We appreciate your remarks. Would anybody else like to come up? Thank you.
So I don't know how this works, other than from Hallmark. So do I get to ask questions? Okay, good.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. My name's Amanda Bunnell.
And Amanda, would you mind letting us know where you live as well, just for the recorder, for Heather?
So right in the corner, behind the field, but down one.
You just give the address.
11173 North, 5650. I'm like, yes, thank you, circled. I have 4 boys, ages 3 to 14. They love to play and scooter and bike. And my neighborhood is one of my favorite things because there isn't a lot of traffic. We have so many benefits and such an amazing neighborhood. As you can see, the few people that came to say their opinions, it's a really great community. So I guess my question is, so I heard the benefit is for potentially emergency vehicles. Who else benefits from that becoming a road, that connection right there? What else am I missing? Why is this on here? For what reason?
One of the things that I was thinking was it would kind of be an ideal connection for kids on bikes.
It's already a walking
and stuff,
path.
you know, right? And I walked it today, and it's you know, there's a narrow kind of sidewalk walking path kind of thing, and it's you know, my vision for it is no traffic, period. Emergency vehicles, which we may never see it used. It may never ever see, tires from a vehicle. Hopefully not. But that would serve a really good kind of safe, wide open for bikes, pedestrians, a way to connect that's safer than like the rocky, gravelly kind of connection that exists now, besides just the sidewalk.
Okay. Was there anything else I'm missing? No? Okay. Well, then I can very formally say, and without a doubt, say I'm very much against this. I've seen the connections and what it's done and what it changes. I myself am not an amazing driver and can fly down roads that are big and connected without thinking because of that reason, right? You see a big, long road, you get distracted, you're thinking in your head and you're going too fast. And I think that is going to be obviously something that would happen. If it's an emergency road, I still am very much along the lines of Troy. I don't see it being worth it, short term, long term, for our kids and our families. Of course, there's things we can do to make that path nicer. The path seems fine, short of people allowing their dogs to poop on it. There's no issues. The rocks are whatever. People put, what were you saying? Oh, okay. Am I not allowed? Okay.
I think it all kind of ties together, because if we approve the allowance of putting smaller roads, yes, then this would allow this to be able to be finished. Probably is more likely, or it would just allow it be easier to do it, basically.
I appreciate it, and there's not very many forums for us to say as a community how much we're against that, and it keeps popping up. So thanks for clarifying and helping me. That was not very nice, but I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
My name's Scott Oldroyd. I live at the one in the cul-de-sac there, 5656 West. So the first proposal you're talking about tonight, I would agree with, downgrading the road to just a normal street. The second proposal, I think it has its pros and cons. I think the pro is obvious, gives you some flexibility, but I think the downside is also the flexibility, meaning if you're flexible with one builder and then you're not with another, to me, that's a pretty big lawsuit. Hey, you let him do this, you're not going to let me do that. So I think there's some risks to doing the flexibility thing. I like it, but I think it has some risks to it as well. I think I agree with Troy. Sell it to Troy, get this off your list, and just be done with it. Stop wasting the city's money. Emergency vehicle, the bollard idea I looked up, unless the fire truck's going to drive over the bollard to get to the other side, it's way faster to drive around than to have anything that restricts a city vehicle. It's less than a minute to go around that street. And the fire department, and they're on this side of the freeway of SR 92. If they need to get to this neighborhood, they drive up 5600. If they're going to the other neighborhood, they drive over to 5720. They're not, in the last 50 years, how many times has the police commissioner said, I wish I could have driven through that road? It's just not going to happen. He can go around, or he drives up the main street. So I don't see that road. I'd love you to sell the road. I know that's not tonight's proposal, but if you'll just get this off your list and save the city some money and let the neighborhood help Troy maintain that, I think it would save you a lot of headache and us down the road, because I don't think we ever want to connect that through. It's not going to be a benefit. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to come up?
Hi, my name's Michelle Saunders, and I live on 5600. 11085. So I'm not very close to this, but my children play with all the children who live on that corner and that street particularly. But I have noticed that since that light on 5600 got put in, which I love, okay, and I also hate and I love, okay, so I have like a very conflicting emotion about it. But I've noticed that the traffic has not maybe necessarily increased as far as numbers, but increased as far as can we make it to the green light before it turns yellow or red? And my fear is that when you open up a road to create connectivity, that creates more people coming to the only light in the entire side of that huge section of road between 6,000 and my street. And it's scary. I'm very scared because I love living in Highland, but I also don't want my children to become roadkill or whatever you want to call it, for better or worse. But I do have a question. Is tonight the night where you guys decide on this topic? Like you guys decide today that you're going to do it or not do it?
Okay, so here's your answer. So we are the Planning Commission. So we actually don't have any legislative authority. We can make recommendations to the City Council, and then the City Council is the final arbiter or decision maker on the two topics tonight, and that is changing the designation of the road and then also allowing Planning Commission and City Council the ability to sort of be creative with our current city street standards.
Okay.
So what is not on the topic tonight is make this a through road. But in the spirit of full disclosure, the reason why this has come up is because that is on deck.
Right. Okay. So I guess I was told that a couple of you are not the regular planning commissioners. And so will the regular planning commissioners be present when you guys decide to present this to the City Council?
Thank you for that follow-up. So to clarify, everybody, even alternates, are actually been sworn in as Planning Commission members. And with regards to these two topics tonight, the change in designation as well as the ability to allow the city to adjust, this will be the last time we will address those two specific topics. So from here, if it's successful or unsuccessful, it can still be taken to the City Council.
Awesome. Okay, well then I vote that you sell it to that guy so that he can still maintain it. I don't even know him, but I like him.
Thank you for your remarks. Okay, would anybody else? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Whitney Hebert, and I live 5636 West, 11200 North. We bought the house 6 or 7 months ago, and part of why we bought it is because it's in a quieter part of the neighborhood and there's not a lot of traffic. So I'm against building the through road. I have 4 kids at home, from 5 to 13. They play outside, they run on the road, they like the cul-de-sac. I don't want to encourage people driving through quickly to get to where they need to go. We used to live backing up to Alpine Highway, just a half mile up the road, and the noise and the traffic, it scared us that our kids would just go behind to the busy road. I didn't want to be by a busy road, and we like the neighborhoods. We just moved half mile down. So that my vote is sell it to Troy, and yeah, I think the safety of the children should come first above convenience and everything else. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to comment on this matter? All right, if nobody else would like to comment, we're actually going to conclude public comments. And commissioners, let's have questions and discussions about this. And at a point, somebody make a motion if you would like.
I'd like to share a few thoughts on the designation, and then also on whether I feel the road should go through or not, because I think that is relevant. And the mayor actually asked us about that when we went on a drive together. So I'm just going to read this because I drove this area, as well as I went with the group that went a few months ago. and I'm pretty certain of how I feel about this. So, and I wrote it down so that I don't forget anything. So I just said, I don't think changing the code to allow roads to be built that don't fit the width requirements and potentially create an unsafe situation with the road so close to a home is justified, especially in this particular situation when both sides of this road, east and west, can be accessed by emergency vehicles from multiple roads that connect to SR 92, as well as Alpine Highway on the east and 6000 West on the west. I drove this area a few months ago with the group, as I just said. This whole area is a maze of winding roads and cul-de-sacs and has been functioning quite well as a quiet residential oasis for as long as this neighborhood has existed, it looks like. Prior councils even allowed a cul-de-sac to be built on the east end of the section in question, clearly showing the intent for it not to go through. I don't think we need to change code to allow for roads that don't fit the road designations for particular areas, because I don't think we should put the road through here. It's too tight and not necessary. It would be nice to get the weeds down and create a wider asphalt pedestrian right-of-way for bikes and walking traffic. If a future situation does come up where a road is deemed a necessity and it's not the required width, as Rob has suggested with mountainsides, things like that, that we don't want to cut into, we can visit this again on a case-by-case, but as of now, I'm a no.
Thanks, Sherry.
I just have a few comments because I live across the highway on 5750, and I drive across and go to the Stake Center and play pickleball every morning. So I see all the groups of kids coming for the bus, just sprouting from the houses and bolting across the road. And I know that it is a narrow with all the driveways accessing it. I do want for those young mothers with the young kids, because what we hear at Planning Commission all the time, I have 6 of my own, is that, you know, the safety of the children, the safety of the children. A lot of that has to be the responsibility of the parents and teaching the kids safety. We hear a lot of times in Planning Commission, we need a special trail for them to walk on when there is sidewalk access as well. I'm only stating this beforehand because your neighborhood's going to change. In the blink of an eye, you will have 16-year-olds and you will have cars that will now soon become a parking lot. I know because I'm at that phase. It'll soon become a parking lot for all your drivers. And you will have like 4 or 5 cars, which is the nature of Highland for some weird reason. So it's going to change, and they're going to be zooming in and out of there within just a few years. And maybe some of your neighbors will be at that phase before you. So I'm just trying to help you think down the line. I wanted a perfect little oasis for my 6 people. I'm now with 6 drivers. So put that into consideration when you're talking about access and driving. It's so nice to have that walking trail connecting. And I see that what we are trying to do right now as a city is come up with a transportation plan that allows more connectivity, not just for cars, but for pedestrian walkways, trail systems. We're trying to go through all of this and look at the big picture for how can we make sure that there is access? How can we make sure emergency vehicles in snow with piled up snow can still get to where they need to go? And when you have a cul-de-sac and stuff like that, the nature of that will be shove it all in that space so that you have more parking for all your cars, right? So that generally probably isn't maintained for accessibility other than walking, is what I would imagine. So as far as rezoning the road, I would say let's put it to what it is and what it's functioning as and make it match. But as far as putting it through, I don't exactly see, well, we're not talking on the table about putting it through tonight. But what we are talking about is, and I'm just drawing a blank because I'm trying to say it, the second thing we're doing, other than rezoning the road, is
Adding some flexibility to city.
the flexibility. I think that's really important to have the flexibility. We need to go to our code first. Flexibility would be only for the sake of unique land structure, physical stuff, that county access to utilities, things like that. So that's where I am on that. Those are my comments.
I would like to comment. I believe, agree with Sherry on like 100% of what she said. I live on this side also of the freeway, and I walk over there and run over there all the time, and I always use that little path, and I know we're not talking about that path, but again, this is all going to lead to that path. I'd like to see it fixed up. Troy, if you want to build like a little whippet dog run on that one side and a little path, you know. Every time I walk by, my daughter has 2 whippets, and they run like crazy, and all I can see is them running back and forth on that strip. But it is a nice access to get through with walking or bike riding. That's all I can see. We've had no problem with emergency vehicles. I agree completely that they're going to get around just as fast as they're going to get through. And if, as far as snow problems, we can, the city can keep it when they plow so that there's access. If they, whatever emergency vehicle access we have to have in that area, they have to plow for that anyway. We've been talking about trying to make this town walkable, trying to make it, we're hearing all this city, all this stuff we've been doing all last year or this last so many months. Walkable, have some kind of flavor, get people together, all that family stuff. I don't want to, that neighborhood should stay exactly as it is with that little path cleaned up, 56 on the streets, and allowing the front doors to be on the street to keep it a road and a little local street. And I just cannot, we're just 16-year-olds don't all have to have cars. I had 2 kids. Not all of us have 6.
Well, that depends.
Some do, but so, and they can park it and walk, park it wherever they can down the street and walk. But seriously, we're trying to make this walkable, and we're talking about giving kids cars and have one for your high school kids, and they can pick up the kids from junior high. Yeah. But anyway, I just have to say, I think your neighborhood should stay a neighborhood, and we're 1 block from the main road in the town. What do we need 2 big roads for? Right, Peril? Yes, sorry.
Actually, Troy, just hang on a second. Do you mind? Hey, other commissioners, are you okay having reopening for public comment?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, Troy, please come up. Thank you.
Troy Harris again. One thing that you should be aware of, kind of to further what you were discussing, when the neighborhood came together and we did that rock gravel base, we had to come back later and put those boulders on that east side, because as soon as it was passable in any form whatsoever, UTVs, motorcycles, like they were coming through at unbelievable speeds. I think one of our local neighbors had the city approve a sign that you couldn't drive. They didn't pay attention to any of that. So we as the neighborhood took it upon ourselves to put those boulders on that east side. And you won't believe it, it stopped immediately. So, it just comes back to, if there is a path through, people will take advantage of it.
Okay, thanks, Troy. Great comment.
Yeah. Oh, and the sidewalk gets used constantly. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for staff or fellow commissioners? Jerry, do you have any thoughts?
I just want to clarify. Currently, we're putting stuff in anyways, right? Like, if we wanted to put a road there, put an access there, that road was supposed to be a bigger road, we didn't do it. This is just cleaning it up so that we're doing things the right way. It doesn't prohibit us currently from doing, that's what we've done on that road.
We've done it in a lot of places without having this language in there.
Yeah. And
like
so
I said,
this, what I understand, is not about, I think that would be a good walk path, whatever, connection. And it does come up all the time. So does my issue come up all the time. The no build zone, right? Mm-hmm. But talking about this issue, we're trying to clean up so that we're doing things the right way, not just willy-nilly.
Yes.
Because there are times you have situations, because I'm a developer, where you can't do the full right-of-way. You need to get rid of the park strip to bring the sidewalks in. The road stays the same and it goes through. It's an exception. What I do like is that, you know, I've been in the cities where staff can approve that. And it gets a little, but it's still something. So if this got passed and we decided we were putting a road, connecting that as a road using these, whatever we just made up to make it work, for whatever reason, it would come to Planning Commission, then it would go to council. It's not just going to happen, you know, through the back door, is what I'm saying. Right now, we could do, if the city needed that access to go through, they could do it without this. They just can't. But it's just, it should be in our code. We should have it lined out. And the reason we're changing or downgrading that road is because it can't even be that road now.
Correct.
Like, it just can't. And so, you know, changing that and then cleaning this up, for me, this is just becoming more professional city, putting stuff in our, because to your credit, you've cleaned up a lot of stuff since I've been, you know, I've been here 10-something years, cleaned up a lot of stuff that we just do without it being in our code. And this, to me, is one of those things.
It's actually helping councils further on to stick to what we're supposed to be doing.
Not passing this doesn't prevent us from completing that road. We can put a road through there.
Yeah, and passing it doesn't force that to become a road.
Right.
You know?
And city engineers aren't, and the fire department especially, are not going to allow a road to go through there that's not accessible, that doesn't have the, you know, because just from what I can see, there's not enough width to really, you know, I'm not an engineer, but just looking at it and looking at the roads around it, what I see is at best is getting a good connectivity road for the kids, bicycles, you know, and ATVs, they rip through our neighborhood. And I don't know if they're coming from another neighborhood, your neighborhood, but they're probably in your neighborhood doing that, your neighbors. But they also get on the sidewalks, they get on our trails. But the issue that we're trying to resolve tonight is just more of the cleanup, because that's what came up in our meeting between council and planning commission was, hey, we have certain circumstances where we have to have certain roads, and right now we're just kind of willy-nillying it. What we're trying to do is clear this up so that it's in our code. This is what we can do, but it doesn't prevent us currently right now. Not passing this doesn't prevent us from putting that road in.
And it doesn't let developers bypass general code at all.
Correct. And if we let one developer do it, that circumstance exists, right? We would have to, it would apply to the next developer that did it. But again, it's going to be used very sparingly. And then ideally, the same circumstance shouldn't come up more than, if we're planning correctly, as we're foreseeing those in future developments, we're not going to allow those things to keep happening.
The fact that this coincides with the general plan update, though, and that people are talking about putting this road through is what makes me uncomfortable with approving it right now. And in fact, if we said we're not going to put this through and then brought this back, I would totally support this. But in this moment, I just can't.
Yeah. But I just want to make sure everybody understands. With or without this, we could put a road in.
Yeah.
Period, end of discussion, whatever we want. Ballards, whatever. I like some of the stuff you guys were saying. I do see it. I think it does need to be there for connectivity, but more of a neighborhood kids instead of the kids riding. They're on the road a lot longer to loop up around than just cutting over to see their friends. So I could see that. I don't have a dog in the fight on if that is a road or not.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Any comments from anybody else?
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed that out, Jerry. I think it's important to understand, because I'm absolutely in favor of these two amendments. I'm not in favor of a road going in there. And I can see a lot of, which is why I was trying to ask some questions before, I can see a lot of reasons why cleaning up this code the way that the city's proposed will be beneficial, especially because any decisions, any proposals that are made in the future still have to go through this whole process. This isn't a blank check for anyone to kind of, you know, railroad the process and get something through. And I like what Sherry said. It reminded me of, in my family, we, for some reason, we only allow our kids to have like sugary cereals on Saturdays. We call it Saturday cereal. And every once in a while, my son will sleep in and forget to have cereal. And later that evening, he'll be like, "Oh, I forgot to have it. Like, can I have some now?" And I'm like, no, dude. Like, breakfast was hours ago. Like, sorry, there's next Saturday. And I feel like the same situation applies with the city. Like, the city had a chance to have their Saturday cereal, to do what they wanted to originally do with this road, making a connection, whatever, decades ago. But it's the evening now, and it's too late. It's too late for the city to follow through from any plan that was like 50 years ago. So, but I like this code. I think there's only really with regards to just that stretch, which is a separate issue. But I think there's really only two reasons I would like to see it connected, and that's emergency access for emergency services. If that is, I would love to ask the fire chief if he actually sees, much efficacy, because I don't see it as an alternative route for emergency services. I see it as an additional route. And if that is of particular benefit to the emergency services, then I would like to see it connected with, and I've seen them, with the big bollards. There's no way anyone's mistaken that for a through road. It might as well be the existing bollard, the boulders that are there now. But I think the main reason why I would like to see something done, something finished there, is just a safer, easier, better access for pedestrians and cyclists. I don't drive a car. My main mode of transportation is my bike, and I'm very anti-vehicle. And I don't want to see. I want to get them as many off the roads as possible. And so that's my position on it. But Rob, do you just offhand see, and this is not as relevant to this discussion, but if that little stretch was privately owned, does that introduce liability issues with people using it to access one side of the street to the other? I can also see, I would be absolutely against selling it, like 100%, from what I know now. If that property changes hands and someone decides to throw a fence up, blocking that access that neighbors are used to having. I think in rare instances, I'm for city selling city land, but having it privately owned and then creating kind of like a pedestrian access for it, is that inviting liability issues?
No, because someone else would own it, so they would own the liability.
Right.
We have issues when we do trails on private property as easements. It creates a lot of confusion for the property owner, so we don't like doing that. If this is going to be something like that, I would say, just build it as a trail corridor or something and landscape it. We have several like that throughout the city, but don't turn it over to private ownership.
Sure, yeah. And so if we pass these amendments, and if fire chief is like, no, it isn't a critical access point for us, then the city would still have the option to designate it as trail space.
It's still city property. They can do whatever they want with it.
And they can just make like a trail that's clearly for pedestrians. It's narrow. It's, it looks nice. It's landscaped. Okay.
Great. Thank you, everybody. My 2 cents worth on this is I think the first one, changing the road designation, makes sense. The second part, I'm not in favor of. And let's just be real here. The reason why this is being proposed is because there was talk of connecting them. And another thing would just be a plea for all of us. We're all neighbors. We all live in the same city. We have different opinions about things, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. In some case, it may be construed as wrong. So even though we may disagree amongst each other, I would just ask for all of us to see each other as that. We're just individuals trying our very best, and sometimes we may not make the best of choices or decisions, but we are just doing our best. So at least from my point of view, I'm in favor of redesignating the road, but I'm not in favor of the formal designation giving the city flexibility to adjust things, because we do that in any case. You know, there are umpteen examples throughout the city where, for whatever reason, typically practical reasons, there won't be a park strip, or instead of there being a 5-foot sidewalk, there'll be a 6-foot or an 8-foot sidewalk for whatever reason. So after that little waffle from me, does anybody have the desire to table a motion?
I have a quick question for Rob. Oh, Jerry. Well, are there currently, on the city's docket, any other areas of the city where this Second Amendment would empower the city to solve some problems or address some issues?
The one that comes to me to mind is project we're trying to get done around the Strasburg Church area with 10400 North and 6000 West, because the rights of way are all varying widths and not under city ownership. The church owns out to half the road in one place. If we're going to do a project to build some sidewalks, we're probably not going to be able to get it to city standard. So this would give the city some coverage to say, we still met our general plan requirement for this transportation facility. That's one that I can think of immediately.
So if we do what we've been doing, where you just go do it, it puts liability on the city. Is that correct?
Correct.
So doing this, we'll do what we're still doing, but limit our liability.
Correct. In fact, some of you may recall a few years ago over near Highland Glen, there was a proposal for a road that was supposed to be wider, and there was, I don't remember if it actually got to court, but there was a lot of legal attorneys got involved, and the basic premise of the claim was, your master plan doesn't show this as a road. You cannot build this as a road, and they had some very good grounds to make that argument. So this is one of those things that kind of cleans that up, says, we understand what our transportation plan, and we're giving ourselves a little flexibility when we can make these findings to do that. So we don't have a similar situation happen.
And it allows us to accomplish a task without having to infringe on private property and people having to sell off property or eminent domain or
none of this is talking about eminent domain, which I have done it. I don't want to do it. It is not a fun process.
And this really isn't intended to make small roads big. It's interesting.
No, it's the opposite.
It's interesting we're pushing against taking bigger roads and making them smaller.
The city has a very wide right-of-way standard in comparison to other cities. Many local, like smaller rural cities have 34, 40-foot right-of-ways. We have very wide, even our lowest one is 56 feet, which is wide. So this is giving us flexibility to go, we can't make that work. Should we go smaller?
Great, thank you. All good comments. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Can I just ask Rob one more question? Sorry, I'm really sorry. The issue that came up a year and a half ago with the intersection of North County and Timpanogos Highway, right? And how the UDOT and MAG wanted to come in and drastically widen that entire intersection. But since since one of those streets is a city street, we had to play along, and we didn't as much, which I was really glad to see. Would an amendment like this allow us more flexibility would an amendment like this come in handy in that situation? Would it come in handy at all in allowing us to play a little bit with the right-of-way standards?
Yeah,
just on ours, because UDOT would have to follow suit with whatever we decide to do on that road.
It actually might, not that we could jump to, the problem we had was we didn't have anything between 5-lane arterial and 3-lane collector.
Right.
This might say, we only really want to do a 3-lane collector, but we want some turning lanes that go back for 300 feet, and that's it. Where we don't really have a cross-section that does it. So it could help with that circumstance. I would never see this used as, this is designated as a 3-lane collector, and we're going to do some flexibility and build an arterial through there. That's not what this would be used for.
Because I remember at the time, there was there seemed to be little to no middle ground between
Yes,
the
I
options
had to
that were
create
provided.
a new classification on our legend
Yeah.
for a 4-lane arterial for that stretch of the
Mhm.
road.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chris.
No problem. Anybody like to make a motion?
So I'm going to make a motion to,
Hmm.
I'm going to split this out because I think we agree on for sure one.
Yeah,
but
that's
not
what I
on
was
the
going to
other.
say. Can we
So I'm going to
split
make
it?
a motion to redesignate, what is it, 11-200 to be
Local road.
a what? A
Every
local
six-
street.
I second.
All right. Could we do roll call on that, please?
Yes.
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 But with the clarification, at the exclusion of the second one, as part of this motion. Yeah. Is there a secondary motion?
So I move to approve, which amendment was it, the first or the second?
The second.
Second.
The second amendment, allowing the cities to have some flexibility through the approval process on our roads in special circumstances.
I second that.
Okay, could we roll call that, please?
Well, after you're making a motion and second, you can have a discussion. Quick question. I'm just nervous about this, the vagueness. You know, I love the ideas of what we want to do with it, you know, but I'm so afraid that another planning commission or city council or whomever, whatever comes in, wow, we can do this and we can do this. So I'm concerned about the vagueness. So I would probably have to, if I'm going to vote right now, no.
Please. Okay. Wes?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Where's the mayor? No.
So, Rob, in a case, we just a split vote.
The motion failed.
Okay.
You as 4. We can treat it as a negative recommendation. Essentially, it's you failed to make a recommendation on this one.
Yeah.
But we had the first one with the positive recommendation, so that will go forward to council.
Okay, and for the benefit of the folks that are here, thank you very much, everybody, for your good questions and thoughts. When will this be, Rob? It's next week or in 2 weeks?
Next week.
Okay.
So the June 3rd is next Tuesday, beginning at 6 o'clock. We typically put public hearings towards the beginning of the meeting, so you'll show up at the beginning of the meeting, beginning at 6 if you want to have.
Yeah.
Be part of
Remember,
this.
it's at 6, not 7.
It starts at 6, not 7.
Correct. And Doug, thank you very much. For the benefit of everybody that, if you don't know, Doug is one of our city councillors and always is a good resource. If you have opinions, please communicate them. Thanks, Jay and Rob. Can we move on to the next
Can I,
item?
a quick thing, is there a way to, see, I want to support the project you're talking about. Is there a way we can do something with some of these, the second part? Not tonight,
Not once we've
not
voted.
tonight, but I mean, as
if
far
you
as.
want to design a road, that's not really the planning commission's role.
No,
You give the general recommendation
city
on the
council,
policy,
right.
and then council
We'll
makes
let
final
them,
calls.
we'll blame
on it.
them.
Yeah, if I may, Deborah, to answer your question directly, we as a planning commission, kind of like what we did with the ADUs, where we just decided regardless of what's on anybody's agenda, as long as 2 planning commissioners support a proposal, they can bring a proposal to planning commission, and then we can recommend it to city council. The mayor, however, has the ability to just say, no, this is not something the city council is
That's
going to
right,
look
okay.
at.
Yeah.
But if you do have opinions on, we would like this to be I'm just going to make up something, a designated trail, you're welcome to bring that up as something formal. It would then, if I understand correctly, it would come to planning commission and then subsequently go to city council for them to decide.
And we could even facilitate a trail connection. That is, we have a way of tying that into the general plan, so that's something you say, we should add this to our trail network, so it's just a trail corridor.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely can do that.
Okay, that's very good thoughts, Deborah. So just bear that in mind, okay? All right, next topic is the PO Zone Daycare Development Agreement. PO Zone is that area to the west of Bull River, just before Texas Instruments, which we've seen every 5 minutes, it feels like.
We have, and I'm still working on the overall comprehensive amendments that we talked about. However, this proposal came in that I think could help with that process. So we have representative from the potential applicant here. This is dealing with the professional office B site. So that's the one that's it's rotated. So south of the storage unit, on the kind of across from where the flex office space is. One of the tricky issues in designing these amendments that we've been talking about is what we do with that original master plan and how we decouple it, but we don't want to just open the doors too wide. And especially this site, there's a lot of questions about, well, it shows 2 buildings on the original plan. Was one of those used up in the flex office site? Should it only be limited to one? Some residents said, well, can those be limited to 1 story as well, even though they're planned for not? And we have a potential daycare developer that may solve some of those questions. So the applicant's asking for a legislative development agreement. So kind of unlike what we just said, but in the vein of doing it right, you can do a development agreement that overrides zoning for a specific site if you go through the same process that you do for a code amendment, which means planning commission and then council. So I talked to council about this last week, so I want to talk to you about it to get there's no decision being made. It's just getting input, and I want you to start giving me ideas as we work through this, because the council said they're interested in pursuing this, so it's going to come to the commission. So I want your input as I start drafting this, working with Logan here on the development agreement. These type of legislative development agreements are really useful when you really want to give something for one site and you want to make sure it doesn't go anywhere else. We say we like it here as it's proposed, but nothing else. So that's what we're trying to do. And it wouldn't hamper the overall PO zone fix. It would actually potentially help it. So as the original master plan was set up for this site, and I'll bring it up here again. This is that site again. You'll see there's 2 buildings on there, Building 4, Building 6, which is 6,800 square foot of footprint. Each building was 3,400 square feet with 18,000 square feet of buildings overall, because each building was designed to have a basement, a main floor, and a second story. So the buildings are more, in terms of massing, large. And then obviously we have the design criteria that were in those exhibits, the kind of very residential feeling that we went through. The proposal is for a single-story building, 10,000 square feet. So a bigger footprint in terms of how big it is, because the 2 buildings were 6,800, but it's less mass because it's smaller overall. It goes to 1 story rather than 2. So we cut down about 8,000 square feet off of the massing of the site. The plan would be for this size, be about 100 plus children with peak traffic at commuter hours, people dropping off their kids on the way to work and then picking them up after. It would override that old master site plan for this site. We just clear up questions about how many buildings do you get? It is this. You get this building in this arrangement and this configuration. It does not, which is why I like this.
Yeah.
And one of the advantages, I think, is it's kind of perpendicular to the residential zones. Not quite, but it does kind of limit the view impacts from it. And I kind of overlaid the original 2 so you can see them. It's a bigger footprint, but again, less massing. And then we have 2 concept, these are their concept elevations, which involves a peaked roof, kind of dormer type feel. These aren't finalized, but this is kind of the vein of moving forward. We'll probably have these in the development agreement as something along those lines, plus the text of the PO zone to flesh out the details of it. So we also, I invite you to hear from Logan. He's the representative of the applicant coming in. We're looking for some direction. Because the council came and told us they like this, so we're going to move forward with it. But we can put in a lot of terms with the development agreement that says, we're going to give you this, and here's some additional things we have to do. We've talked about the medians, making sure they're finished, landscaped, and actually installed on that south side. We could put in restrictions on building height if we wanted to say 28 feet is kind of what they've been proposing. We can work through some of those more detailed things to get this exactly right here. So happy to answer any questions, and Logan is here as well.
I just was wondering if you could put it back down to the aerial view of the plan, and then what access we have to the main road. So they're going to have an arterial road or a local road that 100 cars would be coming plus faculty for this. So I'm just having taken kids to daycare and knowing the complete gridlock that causes. I'm just curious how the configuration, that's going to be huge for traffic.
That's my same comment.
It's a great comment. Logan kind of talked about that to the councils. He better address the drop off.
Because when you go,
how they facilitate.
When you go over to the other PO zone area where the tire store is.
Yes,
I think that's Lehigh, but that has something like that in there. And the car situation, and I'm not saying I'm against this, but I think it really needs to be thought, because there's a major intersection that's right there, and if people are trying to go left out of there, maybe it's a right turn only out of there. Like you can come in, but a right turn only. Something that gets that, like the NASCAR racing, they get in and out quick. But the ones I've seen, the traffic, like she said, is the biggest issue if it's not thoroughly planned out. And sometimes it wasn't planned out, and they got little arrows or director people out there that are afterthoughting it. And so that would be my only. I like the idea of the daycare. I like that it's a single story. I like the elements that were there. I mean,
you will have what's going on in Alpine at the charter school with traffic backed up, and they have that they've got the 2-lane road, and people are parked all the way up and down the road with kids starting only. So this is a great idea. Just the parking needs to be really thought through, because it will back up onto the main road.
Yeah, that's my only concern, because that intersection is like
Great. Does the Planning Commission, would you like Logan to come up and talk us
'cause
through?
He did a good job at
Yeah.
the council meeting addressing a lot of this.
Yeah, would you be willing to just talk us through what the vision is? And we know this is a moving target, so we're not going to commit you to this, but just to get a sense of what will be coming back to us formally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Logan Johnson with Wright Development. We're located in Centerville. Council was very concerned about the very same issues on traffic. And there are a few factors that I think made them feel a little better. And then they had a great idea that we think will help mitigate as well. Number one, we've run this site by the daycare group. So we will build and develop the building and own it, and then we will lease it to this national group. So we've taken this site plan to them, and their circulation plan is cars would come in and enter the site, and they would go north and loop around and then be able to exit the site. And because no one's turning left out of this site at that point, they foresee a lot fewer traffic interactions there, and then they could dump back on the street. No one's denying that we will have peak hours of drop-off and pickup. One advantage we have over perhaps the charter school or other public schools is they have a strict starting time at X or Y, and 90% of their drop-offs are going to happen right at that moment. We found that our pickup and drop-off is sort of stretched over about an hour, hour and a half. And so, and it's less students than you would have at a public school. So we think that will help mitigate some of the concern. It won't go away, but it'll mitigate it. And then there was one council member who had a great idea that we are more than happy to implement, and that was to move the access from where it is right now up, call it 30 feet or so, so it's in line with the upper level to allow just a little bit more stacking internally and externally. And if typically city engineers will shut me down on that, they want the accesses aligned. But again, this is sort of a dead-end public street, and I can't imagine there's a lot of traffic conflicts there. So that, I think, is a great idea, and we will put that in our plans, and barring any engineering issues, we think that could help as well. So just a few factors that may help.
I just wanted to make a comment that I noticed on here. I actually used to drive my kids to Provo every day for BYU preschool, all of them, and it was quite the commitment. And they, in those many years, because I have 6 children, they redesigned the building that had the preschool, and it used to be, they used to have the playground in the center of everything, and it was really nice. There were trees and everything. And then when they remodeled everything, it was kind of an afterthought, and they moved the playground, made it a lot smaller, and it was right near the road that goes through the whole campus. And so I don't know, I know this might mess up the whole thing, maybe it'll make it better. I don't know, but if you could, that road is on a curve, the playground is right there, front and center, by the road. If a truck ever came down, lost control, I don't know, that concerns me a bit.
That's a great point. You know, this particular group is extremely, there's probably nothing that holds up our projects more than the vehicle protection plans that they have. And they're pretty extensive, whether it's large boulders or these bollards that go down that protect the kids from traffic. It's a great point. If there's a huge truck coming down, I'm not sure what could stop something like that. And yeah, and that's a great point. So,
and pollution, just, I don't know, it just
next to the road, yeah.
Yeah, because you could smell the cars as they went by in the mornings.
Yeah.
When the kids are playing out there. Just something to think about.
Thank you. Yeah, we will absolutely consider it. Thank you.
But I
so
love
much.
this too. I actually really like this. I love that it's one story. If I could also maybe suggest that maybe the outside, is it called the elevation or the facade?
Yeah.
Maybe look a little more like the ones across the street.
To the
South.
To the
south.
east, to the east and south. Yes.
Okay. Rob, if you could do your best to give me an approximate address there.
Yeah, here,
Yeah, it's those Patterson buildings.
so you have,
The Millward and, okay. In terms of dormers and materials and style. Great. Yeah, we can look for that for
Be
inspiration.
updated, obviously, but
Yeah.
just kind of that.
Yeah.
Kind of that look.
there's
Yeah.
the other one.
Kind of like that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels consistent with council's feelings as well. Thank you.
Logan, may I ask you just a practical question? Any thought to how, and I know the intersection is really the city's issue, not your issue. You're just developing a parcel. And so maybe this is a joint question and Chris is not here. But any thought about trying to restrict people entering and exiting? And because right now people can turn left, people can turn right. And you have a similar challenge at Lone Peak, where we've got left turn and right turn, and practically some of those roads, it would just be safer if it was no, you cannot cross traffic and head south for Lone Peak. So if we did right, when you exit it, you could right turn only. You couldn't cut across and then head north, if possible.
I'll talk to Chris about that, making it a 3/4 turn movement, where you can go right into that area coming south, turn left into it, and turn right out of it, but you can't turn left going up Highland Boulevard. I'll talk to Chris. He'll know more about that, but I'll ask, hey, it won't really affect them. They'll be fine either way, but for the city control standpoint, maybe that should be a 3/4 turn movement rather than all four.
Yeah, and that would be I love everything else about it. I love having the entrance up at the top and all that. The only conundrum we have from an engineering point of view is everybody designs it assuming we're all driving smart cars, and the reality is you got these, massive.
Yeah, big cars.
But that's also really not your issue. It's just a practical one.
We had gone down the road on a site a little bit to the east of this, up by the church, and I just want to make sure we represent. I suspect a 3/4 turn could work, but I suspect our tenant is going to really want the full movement. And so if it becomes a significant issue for the city, we'll probably just engage a neutral third party, a traffic engineer, to analyze it. But just didn't want that to go unsaid, that probably is an important element in the site selection for this particular parcel.
And at least for me, personally, given safety and all that, I think it would be very dangerous to have a left turn heading north coming out of that.
Fair
But
position.
with complete
Yeah.
compassion for your situation.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to answer any other questions too if you guys have. And then I think Rob and I will begin the development agreement process, and then I think it's followed up by a site plan after. So you'll probably see this a couple times.
Yep. Any immediate suggestions, thoughts? Sounds like the general concept. We'll just get some more details and flesh it out.
Yeah, I like it. I have a quick question for you, Rob. How does this affect future development of this site or redevelopment? Like, does it lock this in? You know, if it changed hands and the playground area goes away, can the building be extended, you know, south, or can something else be built there, or does it go through the whole redevelopment process?
They'd have to kind of go through redevelopment process. The disadvantage in a way of these development agreements, depending on how you look at it, is it really locks you into one site. Now you can do something because it's always a generally like this concept. You know, we're not saying you said 15 feet on there and we're going to hold you to 15 feet, not 1 inch more. But if you're going to add on another 300, you know, a 3,000 square foot addition, the development plan doesn't allow for that under that development agreement. You have to amend it again. So it restricts it down more than just a zone.
Yeah. Okay.
So then I had a question about the fencing in this area. What would we be talking for fencing, especially, with its use? And would that fencing, if concrete, be solid concrete and not foam?
It's something we need to look at, and then I think Logan's group needs to look at as well, because our plan is typically to have sidewalk that goes along that side, except it kind of doesn't go anywhere on that side of Highland Boulevard. So the question is, how much of a sidewalk do we, because we have our park strip, our parkway detail going up, do we really need it here? And that would restrict what they can do there. But it also doesn't go anywhere. It goes right down to there's a little stub that goes into the Micron property, or Texas Instrument. And we don't really want people walking that direction. So it may be that part of this development agreement, something I need to talk to Chris about is, do we need a sidewalk here? Or do we just make it, hey, we want you to landscape it and maybe put in a fence along there? I'm sure they'll want to put in a fence for their kids. And
we will for sure have a very, either a concrete masonry fence that can protect and act as vehicle protection. Usually, I think with this tenant, they like a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, so we've done sort of a wrought iron with landscaping on either side, and then these wrought iron posts act as the vehicle protection when they go deep. And so just shooting from the hip, I think it'll be one of those two, but happy to bring forth our best effort, and then we can discuss that through the development agreement. If you have any feedback on what you'd like to see, Audrey, would love to.
Yeah, I just was wondering, we've had some issues with people putting in concrete looking fences, but they're plastic, foam, and they fall apart in our weather. But then we are actually, the reality of physical protection coming down that road.
Yeah.
Lots of accidents, lots of sliding, wintertime.
Yeah.
It's still coming downhill from the mountain, and there is still a lot of construction. So just something substantial.
Yeah, I like it. Right now I'm envisioning that little pocket at the corner. I'm just going to put some big old boulders and just some stuff that would stop it. But yeah, just shooting from the hip. But yeah, thank you. That's great feedback.
Hey, Rob, is this an example of that amendment helping out here?
Of what?
The amendment that we were just talking about, where you can delete that sidewalk and change it?
This would be another good example of this calls our parkway detail is supposed to be along all of Highland Boulevard. It doesn't really make sense here.
So that amendment would have helped here.
Jerry, you read my mind.
Also, does this, have we held Patterson Snows to the
they're
the
held
on finishing the
medians.
parkways? Yeah.
They know they can't get C of O on their last building, that little squat thing, until they do those. So we keep reminding them of that. And I've talked to Logan saying they're going to ask about the medians. We need to get the medians landscaped in that area. So they're well aware of that. We're going to make this look nice.
Cool. Logan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Rob? Okay, let's just look at future calendar.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Logan. Okay, so the next general plan powwow is the 10th of June. And is that 6 or 7 p.m.?
6.
Okay, 6 p.m. the 10th of June. We would, if possible, we'd really love you all to come and participate. They're very helpful meetings. Okay, then future meetings, you can all read, so we won't belabor the point. Thank you all for attending. Do we have a motion to dismiss the proceedings?
I move that we close the meeting. Any
I second it.
Okay, roll call.
Okay. Yes.
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 Yes.